Across America, a quiet unraveling is taking place. Prices rise, infrastructure crumbles, crime spikes, cities hollow out, and millions find themselves unable to keep up. Yet the headlines stay strangely calm. This intro sets the stage for a national crisis that isn't loud or sudden, but slow, creeping, and already affecting everyday life. You don't need a PhD in economics to feel it. America is getting poorer. Quietly, steadily, relentlessly. It's not a sudden crash. It's not a dramatic stock market plunge. It's something far more dangerous. A slow motion decline happening right in front of us, while every politician and economist insists everything is stable. But if you talk to the average American, nothing feels stable anymore. Groceries cost 40% more than they did just a few years ago. Rent has doubled in entire metro areas. Wages haven't kept up with inflation since 1978, and the dream of home ownership has slipped so far out of reach that millions no longer even consider it a possibility. This is not a recession, it's not a downturn, it's a silent freefall, and almost nobody is acknowledging it. The illusion of prosperity. On paper, everything looks fine. The stock market hits new highs. Unemployment appears low. Consumer spending remains strong, but beneath the surface, the numbers tell a different story. Credit card debt has hit a record 1.3 trillion, the highest in US history. Delinquencies are rising faster than in 2008. Americans aren't spending because they're thriving. They're spending because they're drowning and using credit to breathe. The average family now pays nearly $700 a month in interest alone. That's not prosperity, that's survival debt. The middle class is being cut in half. For decades, the American middle class was the backbone of the nation. 2 parents, 1 home, 1 car, a vacation once a year. Today, that lifestyle is statistically unreachable for nearly half the country. Middle-income households are being crushed by rising property taxes, shrinking purchasing power, stagnant wages, corporate consolidation, shrinking benefits, exploding healthcare costs, disappearing pensions, and while everything gets more expensive, companies quietly reduce product sizes, cut customer service, and replace jobs with automation, all while reporting record profits. The economy isn't working, it's extracting. Housing, the breaking point. The final red flag, the one economists are terrified to admit, is the housing crisis. The median home price compared to income is now the highest it's ever been, even worse than right before the 2008 crash. In many states, a teacher can't afford an apartment. A nurse can't buy a starter home. A police officer can't live in the city they serve. Shelter, the most basic human need, has become a luxury product. And when housing becomes unaffordable, societies don't adjust. They crack. The dangerous calm before the storm. Economists call it soft landing. Politicians call it resilience. But the real story is far darker. Millions of Americans are one emergency away from financial collapse. The middle class is shrinking. The poor are getting poorer. And the wealthy are consolidating more power than ever. This isn't a recession coming. This is a system slowly failing from within. The numbers are there. The warnings are there. And yet the silence from leaders is deafening, because once they admit what's happening, they also have to admit something else. Nobody is ready for what comes next. Chapter 2: The Infrastructure Meltdown. Water, Power, Transit, Housing. America's infrastructure isn't failing in a dramatic cinematic way. There are no explosions, no collapsing skyscrapers, no Hollywood catastrophes. Instead, it's failing the same way a body breaks down with age. Slowly, quietly, then all at once. For decades, the US has lived off the momentum of its past. Pipes built in the 1940s, bridges built in the 1960s. Power grids built for a world that no longer exists. And now, in 2025, that long-ignored decay is reaching the breaking point. The signs are everywhere, if you're willing to look. Water systems on the brink. Start with water, the most basic necessity for life. Millions of Americans are already drinking water contaminated with lead, PFAS chemicals, industrial waste, or simply unsafe filtration systems. Cities like Jackson, Flint, Baltimore, Las Vegas, and dozens of rural towns are in constant boil water emergencies. In some counties in Alabama and Mississippi, sewage flows in ditches like it's a developing country. In Arizona and parts of California, communities literally ran out of groundwater, leaving residents hauling buckets or relying on temporary tanker trucks. These aren't isolated incidents, they're warnings, because once water infrastructure collapses, you don't get it back easily. The power grid, a system. One heat wave away from disaster. Next comes the electrical grid, a patchwork system built half a century ago and duct taped together ever since. Texas blackouts, California rolling outages, New York substation failures, Midwest grid collapses during winter storms, Hawaii's grid so aged it sparked the deadliest wildfire in modern US history. The truth is simple. The US grid cannot handle modern demand, and when millions of electric cars start plugging in, when summers get hotter, when data centers multiply, this already fragile system will face stress it cannot survive. Experts warn the grid is one cyber attack, one heat wave, or one massive storm away from a regional blackout that could last weeks, not hours, weeks. Transit systems frozen in time. Americans like to laugh at third world trains, but the uncomfortable truth is this: much of the world now has newer, cleaner, safer, faster transit than the United States. Meanwhile, the US limps along with century-old subway tunnels, collapsing rail bridges, underfunded Amtrak lines, stranded rural communities, highways that crack faster than states can repair them, and every year the backlog of needed repairs grows, not by millions, by hundreds of billions. Housing, the final pressure point. Then there's housing, where the infrastructure meltdown that hits closest to home. America didn't build enough homes for 20 years. Then investors bought up entire neighborhoods. And then zoning laws strangled supply. Then construction costs exploded. The result? Rents up 40% in many cities. Starter homes now, 400,000 plus. Suburban sprawl eating rural land. Homelessness rising in nearly every major metro. And while we argue about politics, the basic question remains: where are people supposed to live? The answer, increasingly, is they can't. The meltdown that doesn't make headlines. What makes this crisis terrifying is how silent it is. There's no single moment where the country wakes up and says, America's infrastructure has collapsed. Instead, people just slowly adapt, filling water jugs from trucks, buying generators for storm seasons, using bottled water to brush their teeth, budgeting for rolling blackouts, driving on potholes big enough to eat tires, accepting 3-hour commutes, watching rents drain half their income. People normalize decline until one day it's too late to reverse. America's infrastructure isn't collapsing tomorrow, it's collapsing right now in slow motion, and most Americans have no idea how bad it truly is. Chapter 3: The Social Fracture, Crime, Migration, and the New Urban Exodus. Every nation has a breaking point, not a single moment, not a revolution or a war, but a gradual unraveling of trust, safety, and social cohesion. America's unraveling is already underway, and the signs are impossible to ignore unless you're actively trying not to see them. What's happening now isn't just economic decline or infrastructure decay, it's something deeper, harder to fix, and far more dangerous. A social fracture. A widening split in how and where Americans live, who they trust, and whether they believe the system still works at all. This fracture is reshaping the map of America, one quiet decision at a time. The crime wave nobody wants to admit is real. For years, officials insisted crime was under control. They blamed perception, social media clips, or political talking points. But the data and the lived reality tell a different story. Major cities are facing historic car theft spikes, retail theft waves shutting down stores, violent crime clusters in once safe neighborhoods, organized street gangs expanding into suburbs, police shortages at crisis levels, prosecutors dropping cases due to backlog, drug overdoses hitting record highs. In many places, law enforcement simply can't keep up. It's not just a crime surge, it's a collapse in deterrence. The quiet understanding that the system is overwhelmed, and once people feel that the streets are no longer safe, they make the same decision generations before them made. They leave. The new urban exodus, bigger than 2020. People think the 2020 pandemic migration was the great reshuffling. It wasn't. That was the warm-up. What's happening now is something far larger and far more permanent, a multi-year urban flight that is reshaping the population map of the US. The fastest growing places today aren't big cities. They're small towns, exurbs, and rural counties. Meanwhile, America's largest urban centers are experiencing shrinking populations, collapsing tax bases, rising vacancy rates, empty downtowns, failing public transit systems, boarded up retail corridors. New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, San Francisco, all are losing residents faster than they can replace them. And the people leaving, they're not the poorest. They're the middle class, the very group cities need to survive. Schools in crisis, the breaking point for families. Nothing accelerates migration like failing schools, and across America, families are confronting realities they never imagined. Chronic teacher shortages, widespread behavioral crises, plummeting test scores, classrooms without certified staff, metal detectors and police replacing counselors, state takeovers of failing districts. When parents feel their kids aren't safe, physically or academically, they don't wait, they move. The collapse of school systems isn't just a symptom, it's a driver of the entire urban decline. Homelessness, drugs, and the new urban divide. American cities now face homelessness levels not seen since the Great Depression. Entire blocks of tents, open-air drug markets, and mental health crises overwhelm city budgets. Fentanyl has turned sidewalks into emergency rooms. Meth has turned neighborhoods into unpredictable danger zones. Public parks have become unrecognizable. Cities keep spending more money, billions, yet the crisis grows. People see it, they internalize it, they avoid certain streets, then certain neighborhoods, then entire cities. This is how social collapse happens, not suddenly, but through 1,000 small withdrawals. The America that's emerging, divided, scattered, and unequal. The country is splitting into two realities. 1. People who can leave and do. They move to safer suburbs, rural counties, lower tax states, and newly booming small towns. 2. People who can't leave and get left behind. They remain in hollowed out cities with rising taxes, declining services, and worsening crime. This isn't migration, it's a sheer reshuffling of society. And once this process begins, history shows it almost never reverses. The collapse already started, quietly, slowly, invisibly. America's economic decline was the first warning. The infrastructure meltdown was the second, but the social fracture, the loss of safety, trust, and stability is the phase that transforms decline into collapse. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's not on the news. It's happening in the choices families make every day, in which schools they leave, which neighborhoods they avoid, which cities they flee, and where they rebuild their lives. And the most frightening part? No one is ready for what this transformation means for the next decade.